So many soldiers living on the street, their spirits broken with defeat. What must they think when they look around, eyes passing by and staring at the ground? Does anger fill them when we turn away from the debts we owe that should be repaid? What if at that moment, just once, instead, we saluted in honor, right hand to head, to let them know they are not ghosts, thanking them for being braver than most? If everyone would show them grace, we just might find their pain erased. For all the heroes still fighting to live, and for heroes like you who continue to give. If you see someone who is really lost, please stop and remember what our freedom cost. Good afternoon. We're sitting here today in the Blanco Pioneer Museum on May the 18th of 2011. It's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon and it's a beautiful sunny day. You notice that we're sitting in sort of a different part of the museum. We're in the military part of the museum, and today the Oral History Project will be conducting its first veterans interview here at the museum. It is my honor to introduce Jodie Everett Wunneburger and his lovely wife, Nelda Gwendolyn Stubbs Wunneburger. And my name is Martha Herden, and I've got the honor to sit here and talk to these two lovely people today. Jodie, when were you born, and where were you born?
I was born November 18th, 1923, in Bastrop County, Texas, and right close to the city of Page.
Of Page. Did you live on a farm?
Yes, I did.
How big of a family did you come from?
Big family.
Well, how big is big?
10 of us.
10.
5 boys and 5 girls.
Now that's a pretty good even number. How do you think that worked out?
I guess it's where the Lord wanted it.
Where the Lord wanted it, I kind of agree. Mm-hmm. Gwendolyn, I understand that's the name you like to go by, Gwendolyn? Where were you born at?
I was born in Dripping Springs in 1930.
And how big of a family did you come from?
2 brothers.
Were you raised on a farm?
Yes, farm and ranch.
I think just about everybody in those days was raised on a farm and ranch.
That's right.
Jodie, as you were growing up as a young boy, what did you do? What did you have fun doing? What was your average day like?
Oh, of course, like all kids, we played. Of course, we didn't have toys and stuff like they do now. We played with, well, we played marbles and we went strolling in the wood, hunting, and just a normal boy.
What was an average work day like on the farm?
From daylight to dark.
Daylight to dark. Now, when we say daylight, are we talking like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock? Are we talking about 6 a.m.?
4 to 6 a.m.
4 to 6 a.m. What was one of the first things you needed to do when you got up as a job?
Well, of course, we had showers, we had to go milk. That's one of the first things you had to do. And well, then we'd go out, when we got up at 4 in the morning, we'd go out to cotton patch and pick cotton. I wasn't very big, so I didn't pick a whole lot.
Everybody I've talked to has said that picking cotton was just not a whole lot of fun.
Just it wasn't.
It hurt your fingers.
Back and hurt.
And hurt your back.
Mm-hmm.
But in those days, family had to make a living, didn't
Right.
they?
That's right.
Jodie, did you get to go to school?
Yeah, I went through the 6th grade.
And why did you stop?
Well, I had to work on the farm.
Had to work on the farm.
Yeah.
Okay. What were your parents like?
Well, just old hard-working people.
What did your father instill in you that you think about working?
Well, we knew we had to get out and work to make a living.
Uh-huh.
And back during the Depression, we'd go find the people who raised pinto beans a lot in the field.
Uh-huh.
So we'd go, they'd let us go and pick beans and stuff to eat.
You know, it's been said people can live on pinto beans for quite a while.
Yeah.
It's not a bad meal.
And cornbread.
And cornbread, yes, sir.
And we still eat them.
Where did you go to school at?
Well, the first one was Mesquite School down in Page, out of Page.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went to Antioch, another, not far out of Page. Then I went to Buda. Then we went to West Texas. And I went to school at Knott, Texas. That's between La Mesa and Big Spring.
All right. And how did you find your way up toward the Blanco, Texas area?
Women,
Your sweetheart.
yeah.
Well, tell me about how you met.
Well, I was going to work. I'd thawed out a chicken, and I had to go to work, so I knew the chicken would run, so I took it up to the neighbors. We called her Aunt Elsie, and I told her what happened, that I didn't want it to run, and I let her have it to cook. She said, well, I tell you what, I'm going to invite a friend I know that I'd like you to meet. So she made me willing to meet acquainted. So that's where it started.
The rest of it is history.
That's right.
Do you have children?
No.
Okay.
3 poodles. 3 poodles.
Oh, well, that's just as good. That's just as good. What do you remember as to where you were at when you heard that Pearl Harbor had been bombed?
I was in the CCCs,
Can you explain that a little bit?
Civilian Constellation Corps.
And what were you doing?
We just worked on farms, planted trees, and everything for the farm. Roosevelt, of course, started all that.
Gwendolyn, where were you at when you heard about the bombing of Pearl Harbor that you can remember?
I remember it like yesterday.
Okay.
We was at Oak Hill, at the Oak Hill School. And it was a recess time, and we were out on the swings, and had 3 teachers in first grade in the first room, and then the next one in the middle room. That was where I was. My brother's in the first room, and then I was in the next room, our oldest brother in the third room. The principal taught in there. And Mrs. Campbell was a lady's name, and she came walking out and said that I have something to tell you, children. And of course we all listened to see what it was. She said, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. Well, we're just a little bitty. What is Pearl Harbor and what was that?
Right.
Now that's the attitude and our thoughts. We could care less, you know, we didn't know. But I remember it like it was yesterday. Never will I forget.
How did your families react to the news of Pearl Harbor being bombed?
Well,
That you can remember?
I wasn't at home.
You weren't at home. Can you have any
Well,
memories of that?
Oh yes, my folks began to get ready for the rations. You know, the ration tires and sugar and gasoline, and you had to have little booklets they'd send you. Mom would fill out all your name and address, how many gallons per week you could use, all of that. But the farmers and ranchers were lucky because they got more gasoline.
Right.
So we didn't ever really suffer for like gasoline because we were bringing food and stuff in to sell, and wool and mohair and wood and rocks and all that kind of stuff. Mom and Daddy trying to make a living.
Now, Joe, had you already registered for the draft?
Yes, I did.
Okay. How long was that between the time that this all happened and you pretty well figured that this was going to happen?
Well, I was still in the CCCs when I registered.
Mm-hmm.
And it sent someone out. Of course, I don't remember that far back, a whole lot about it. But they sent this person out and signed us up.
Signed you up. Did you get your choice of which branch of the service
I
you...
sure did. When I got out of the CCCs, I wanted to go in the Navy. So I got my mother to sign for it and everything. And I said, well, I just get out of the CCCs. I want to wait and let them draft me. And of course they did. But it was pretty bad, of course. We lived in Mason, Texas at the time.
And once you got that letter, how fast did you go into your training?
Well, when I still in CCC, they'd already started us marching.
Was it a fair comment to say that the majority of the young men knew this was where we were going to go?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we knew it.
No questioning, just that was fact.
Well, we knew we were going anyway, because I'd already started once to sign up.
Joe, how did you feel about going to serve your country?
I just thought it was my duty. I never went and said I wouldn't go. I just went and over at Fort Sam Houston, and the day before that they'd taken everyone in the Army. Well, the day we were there, they gave us a choice, and then a Marine come around. He said, "I want you." These recruiters and a Coast Guard and the Army. I said, "I want the Navy," which I got.
Now we're surrounded by a lot of uniforms in the room today, and could you point at what you think is pretty close to what your Navy uniform might have looked like?
Looks like that.
That's a handsome uniform.
I used to wear it after I got out. I used to wear that ruptured duck too.
Really?
Yeah.
And the uniform that you would wear when you were on the boat, was it pretty much?
Dungarees.
Dungarees, okay.
And a blue, what do you call them, Cambridge shirt.
How hard was basic training?
For me, I was a little small for my age, and it was pretty rough because I had to do exercise and stuff to build myself up so that I could swim, everything in basic.
Were you a good swimmer?
I'd always swim a little.
Uh-huh.
Out in creeks and tanks.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, you were at the age of 17 when you went into the service. Is that correct?
I was in the CCs.
Okay. And then it was about
18 months later.
18 months later.
Then I waited. I don't remember how many months it was. It wasn't very long. They drafted me.
So from basic training, where did you go from Fort Sam Houston?
Well, we went from Fort Sam through Old Mexico into San Diego, and I went to boot camp there. And they started us out like all the boot camps are, and we done all this training, marching, and just about a little everything.
Learned how to shoot?
Oh yeah, that later on.
Later on. Was it instilled in you that that gun was you need to keep it clean, it was a very important weapon?
Yeah, but I never did have to use it.
You never had to use it?
I did big guns on
the ship?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I was a powder man. They'd hand that powder, bags of powder, and you'd give it to the guy that's loaded the gun, and then they'd already had the bullet itself in there, and then they'd sight it in and fired off. Then that was on the 5-inch gun. Then when I was on the smaller ship, the PC, the patrol craft, that's after what we went. I was 8 months in the Solomon Island, on the island of Bougainville.
Uh-huh.
And we were in a boat pool there. and I decided we were started out as pot wallopers.
Now what is that?
Or some pots and pans.
Kitchen duty.
Yeah. KP. What do we call it?
KP, that's right.
So anyway, we started out that, and we got tired of that, so me and a couple more guys, we decided we were going to be electricians. So we went to chief, and they were glad to get us. And what we did then, we'd take these landing craft boats, and they'd ground them, you know, run with the beach and tire some of them up, swamp them. And we'd take all the generators and starters, tear them all up, out, and we'd take, boil them out in hot water, and we'd take and clean the commentators out on them, and clean them up good. Then they'd put some varnish on the wiring and everything, so it'd insulate. And then they'd put them in the oven, bake them till they dried, and we'd reassemble them.
So nothing was wasted. Everything was needed.
At that time, yes.
Right. The primary area that you served in, I believe, was it the Pacific area?
South Pacific.
Okay, so that would have been around the Philippine Islands?
Philippines, like I say, Guadalcanal, Bougainville.
And there's a boat in particular that you were on, the USS Crescent City?
He said, yeah, APA 21.
Well, I did a little homework on your boat. I call it your boat
Yeah.
because you were on it. I don't know how great of a picture this is.
Well, I got one.
And you have one. I'm going to show this to Barney and then we'll pull yours out. This is a very special boat, by the way.
Yeah.
The USS Crescent is the only boat that's still not scrapped. It's
That's
still
right.
intact
That's right.
from World War II.
It went, they saved it 2 or 3 times. They were set it as scrap metal. But,
Now, do you mind if I give you a little history about your boat?
all right,
And you tell me when I'm wrong,
all right.
okay? Your boat, the USS Crescent, started in New Orleans and it was named the DeLorean.
So it was a,
And during World War II, it was an average daily total of about 13 people that could be found on board the boat, the ship. And for the 4 years of World War II, the USS Crescent roughly carried 1,898,000 people during that period. The crew numbered about 500. It had an average of 23 anti-aircraft guns. The length of the ship was 491 feet. The spread was 17 knots. The cargo capacity of the boat was 140,000 cubic feet, could carry about 2,300 tons. How am I doing so far? This ship received 10 battle stars and these awards during its World War II period. The Asiatic Pacific Theater Campaign Medal, the Philippine Liberation Campaign Medal, the Philippine Presidential Unit Citation, the World War II Victory Medal, the Navy Unit Commendation, the China Service Commendation, the Combat Service Commendation, the Navy Occupation Service, the American Campaign Commendation. The USS Crescent City is considered to have been a truly honored name in United States history. How do you feel about that?
well, I knew it was pretty good, you know,
And why is that, Joe?
because it went from all through a war without it getting scratched. And as we enjoyed our stay aboard it.
Joe, I want to talk to you about when you would go into the islands, and I'm going to concentrate primarily, if you don't mind, on Leyte. Leyte was one
Lady.
of the... Leyte? Is that okay?
That's the way I...
Leyte, you're right. That's how someone else I know pronounced it. My understanding is that when your ship, it would carry the soldiers and the landing craft, the front would come down, out they would go.
No.
Then that's where you correct me.
All right, that LSTs.
LSTs.
They're the one that had ramped down.
Okay.
And now they have nets that can go over the side or game.
Right. And my understanding is that when they went over the side on the nets, that once the men got to the water, then ammunition, things of that nature were carried hand to hand. It was like a line was formed to carry stuff back and
No,
forth.
they had nets. They'd set it down.
And set it down like that.
Uh-huh.
When this was happening, combat was going on, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, on Guadalcanal, we were stationed anchored, and there's another ship that was not too far from us, and they'd put those nets of shells and food and everything.
Right.
They set it in one of those landing craft, and they'd run that at them in troops, run it to the where they could, run it to the beach. They'd unload the troops, and then they'd bring another with the supplies. They bring it, and then those people would unload it, and that ship, that boat would go back to the ship and get another load.
And these were primarily for the soldiers. They were the infantrymen that were going on to the
Yeah,
shoreline.
and the personnel, Navy personnel, which would stay there sometime.
Mm-hmm.
So
What was it like to hear shells exploding all around you?
you got where it didn't bother, because if you could hear them, the shells themselves, going over you, or the ones you had to worry about is the ones you didn't hear.
The ones you did not hear.
Uh-huh.
And why is that?
Because that it would have hit you.
How did you learn the difference?
I guess just the experience.
A question that I hear asked of soldiers, here's one of my silly questions. Did you pray every day?
Well, usually chaplain did that.
Were there times that you were scared more than others?
Well, I don't guess I was young, and I don't guess I really... One time I got really scared.
What was that?
I was on the ship, and I was waiting on a landing craft to take me to shore. And there I was sitting there, didn't know what was going to happen, and just waiting to give you time to think.
Gives you time to think.
Mm-hmm. And then that's the only time I really got scared.
What were you thinking?
I was thinking, I was thinking, what's going to happen? I'm here, and I'm not doing anything. And so we'd go on, and then the next time, but we didn't have that trouble too much.
The young men that were the soldiers going on to the beach, did you ever stop and think what they were getting ready to go through?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, of course, there's so many of them that you didn't have time to think, really, because you are in you're waiting on what to do next,
Mm-hmm.
and you was pretty busy all the time. So, but of course, with the crew, we had certain jobs to do, and some were run the, like I say, run the landing craft, and I went to boot camp, and everybody had to learn to operate one of those landing craft.
Right.
And it was rough go.
Why was it a rough go, Joe?
It just being a kid, I guess, not used to it.
Right. And in fear for your life.
Yeah. Well, you know, really, you know, didn't think about that. I never did.
I've
Well,
heard that when you are, this is something that is common, that you've got to keep that thought out of your mind to keep doing your job at hand.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to ask you a tough question.
All right.
I gather you saw a lot of young men pass away over there.
Well, I tell you what, this is on a different ship after I got off Crescent City.
What was the ship this was on then?
And it was PC 584.
PC 584.
And we were landing on Okinawa. And a ship, destroyer, they had minesweepers go ahead and sweep those mines. Well, this one destroyer, they had a bunch of top people on it, and it didn't wait. It went ahead of the minesweeper, which it did. It hit a mine, and it blew it half in two. When it did, their powder magazine was in midship, and this was a two-stack destroyer, and it blew it half in two between those two stacks. And one end, the guy was on the bow. They threw him back on the stern, and he, I think he lived, but a bunch of them died, was killed, and I was the ship's electrician, so they used flashlights for what I was working on, because they take them in the dining area and put them on the tables, and that's where they operate there, or done what they had to. And they was running the light on the battery. So they sent me down to the electrician quarters to get some more batteries for flashlights. And as I was going, and as I was coming back, I stepped on somebody, stepped right in his gut. And I just froze. And directly somebody, his shipmate, said, "That's all right, but he's dead." And that gave you a funny feeling, because you didn't know if he was dead or alive. So then I finally went on down with the batteries for the flashlights.
And that was tough.
Mm-hmm.
But you kept going.
Kept on going, that's right. You had to.
Of the battles in the Pacific, what would you consider to have been the worst one that you were around?
Well, I think, of course, the first one I was on was Bougainville.
Bougainville, yes.
And we had a lot of security things going on over there. I was in a boat pool there. And we like I told you before, that we took generators and starters and everything and cleaned them up. And they, one night, they had put out black alert. That means that the enemy's on land.
Okay.
We only had 27 acres in the part we had the boat pool.
You only had 27 acres?
That's it.
Wow.
And so we got their guns and got in foxholes and waited. You could hear those shells coming over you. And they hit the mainland. They went over us.
How long were you in that? You said you were in a foxhole, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How long were you there?
Until the raid was over. And they gave
About how long do you think that was?
Oh, maybe an hour.
About an hour.
Because our ship's planes came in, and sunk a bunch of them.
I've heard the story that it was pretty important that you learned real quick to keep your head down.
Yes.
Way down.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't look around too much.
When you were on the out in the ocean, did you see some fierce storms?
Well, we was just in the edge of typhoon a couple of
At
times.
the edge of a typhoon. What was that like?
It hit up and down.
Mm-hmm. I looked up a comment from another soldier who said that they thought it wasn't possible that the ship could roll any further over, but it did, but it still would come right back up and keep it going.
That's the way we did. And I was, like I said, electrician. I had to climb up on the yard arms because we had running lights up there.
Now, how high up was that?
Oh, it wasn't too far. When the ship went over like this, and well, to a part-time I'd be over water over here, part-time over here.
It's a silly question to ask you, Joe, but did you get seasick?
Oh yeah. Now that's when I first went aboard the USS Crescent City. I went out and I was dumb, of course. I went out and I got seasick. And I didn't want to throw up on the deck, so I went and to throw up overside. And when I did, the wind was blowing and blew it right back in my face.
Oh no, Joe!
So then you learn right quick that you
Now,
don't.
do you get over the seasickness
Oh, yeah.
pretty quickly?
Yeah. Well, and then another time I was down below deck, and I was feeling bad, so I had a restroom. Now this was an old cruise ship.
Cruise ship, uh-huh.
And it had restrooms scattered around. And so I went in that restroom and I smelled, well, before I smelled where they'd thrown up, and that made me sick.
Oh.
So anyway, you learn to take it.
And after I was going to say, after a while, you got over it.
Oh yeah.
And you never really had it again while you were out there on the ship?
Now you learn to control it.
How did you learn to control it?
You just held your breath against it.
Well, I was going to say, would it be silly to say you kind of gutted it up?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that? Okay. Joe, did you make friends with some of your Navy personnel?
Oh yeah.
Can you tell us about some of them?
Well, now let me see. I went in with a guy from Austin, Texas. We met in Chow Line just before we shipped out. And he said he was from Austin. I said, well, I'm from Bastrop. So he come chiseled in line. We was in Chow Line.
Uh-huh.
He chiseled in front of me. And we got to be, well, I'd met him before we left. But anyway, we got to be pretty good friends. Willing even knew him.
Do you remember his name?
Gilbert Wallace.
I'm sorry?
Gilbert Wallace.
Gilbert Wallace. My goodness, Joe. Gilbert Wallace.
Mm-hmm. And I knew another guy named from Mississippi.
Yes, sir.
Laurel, Mississippi. His name was G.D. Welburn. Didn't have a name, just initials.
G.D. Wilburn.
Uh-huh. And we got to be good buddies. And when we got transferred from the Santa Clara, the Crescent City, well, he and I went to New Orleans, Louisiana. And this is something I shouldn't have done, but I did.
What did you do?
Well, I'd take off. He'd muster in for me, and he'd take off, and I'd muster him in.
Oh.
He went to Laurel, Mississippi. I went to Houston to see some of my kinfolk. That's the worst thing I
You
ever
think you're the only one that ever did that?
No.
I doubt that is right.
No.
How long do you think you served on the Crescent City?
I think it's about 8 months.
About 8 months.
I think I went on it about May 1943. And He got served 8 months. I tell you why we did that. We had heard stories. Of course, you hear stories. But we were young, Gilbert and I, and G.D. Wilbur, and they said, you had her serve so much time on one of the islands before you could get to come home. So we went and volunteered for the island duty, which was pretty nice. It rained a lot. Island covered up with water, and sand crabs getting your foxholes. That's where it was going to try to invade us. But anyway.
I heard a lot of people got malaria.
Yes, but I didn't.
You didn't. And how did your feet hold up?
My feet were fine, because we were in a shop.
Didn't have to get in the water that much.
Oh.
The other ships that you were on, about how long do you think you were on those?
Well, I went from Crescent City, Bougainville. I went from there to Guadalcanal for reassignment. That's when they assigned me on the PC. I was there about 3 months.
And you were in you were in World War II.
Right.
Or from the beginning to end. You were there from the beginning to end.
No, I went in at 43.
At 43. Came out in
45.
45. Okay. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the Crescent and see if that picks up for you.
Right.
There's just so much about it. As you said, it was considered to be a troop transport battle vessel. It served for numerous amphibious landings, and it was later used as an evac hospital, which I heard you talking about people being worked on there in a hospital setting on the boat. August the 8th of 1942, it was involved with the first landing of Guadalcanal, and in that one day, the USS Crescent destroyed 4 enemy bombers in one day. February of 1943, the ship was reclassified as an attack transport. Remember we talked about an APA-21?
Yeah.
July, September, and October of 1944, it landed troops in Guam, Pelee, and Leyte Islands. In 1945, it had the honor of bringing war-weary soldiers home.
Well, in between that, we in Okinawa, it was used as a station for people we'd go there and stay on it till we got their orders. And that's what it done for a while. I was aboard it.
Do you remember what the international radio call was for the Crescent City?
No, I don't think so.
It was November, Charlie, Delta, Oscar, with the initials NCDO. Each boat had a different international radio call.
But radio man won't do most of that.
Okay. Now, Joe, when did it dawn on you, or how were the events that happened that you were realizing that it was going to be time to leave World War II? How'd that all end?
Well, then my time was up. We left on April the 1st. I mean, not April, July the 1st, 1945, I believe. And I got transferred back to the States. Well, I went first. I was on a aircraft carrier, USS Kearsarge, as commissioning crew. Well, I stayed there about how long? I forgot how long it was, but long enough. Then they sent me to New Orleans, Algiers, Louisiana, at the naval base there. and that's where, Wellborn would swap out. And we were shore patrol, base shore patrol, and we stayed on that for quite a while. Then I had to stay over some more because I was an electrician and my rate got frozen, so I had to wait till I got 2 more points.
Yes, the points were a big thing. I told you that I had a little bit of a surprise for you. And I think this is probably a good time because we're going to be going into another part of your military service. But in my research, the Crescent City was used to take the infantrymen to the islands, correct?
Right.
Okay. Do you remember me telling you that my father served in World War II?
Yes.
He was an infantryman.
Yes.
He was on your boat.
Really?
When you just said the name Gilbert Wallace, your friend, that was my father's boss.
My goodness.
Now, what are the chances that we would meet and have that type of connection?
I don't know. I don't even know if he was still alive. He left Austin and went up to Granite Shoals.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I know all about him. You were doing something a while ago. You had your hands together and you were doing this, weren't you? Tell me about that.
I don't know. It's just a habit.
My father did it all the time. And I'd say, why are you doing that? And he said, well, I'm going to go this way for a while, and then I'm going to go this way for a while. And I saw you doing that.
I didn't even know it.
And I was thinking about my daddy. But another girl here in Blanco that I'm good friends with, her father was also with the infantry. I talked to her last night, told her about you, and all I had to do was mention the name Crescent City. And she started hollering on the phone, and she said, please tell Joe that my father was also on his ship as an infantryman.
Yeah, we had lots of them.
Small world, isn't it?
Yes, it
That's
is.
right.
Joe, did you get letters from home while you were in the military?
Oh, yes.
From your parents?
My mother, and of course my dad didn't write too good. He shaked too. My mother always wrote me. My grandmother, my father's mother was already passed away. But my mother's mother wrote me all the time. And I had cousins that wrote me. I had quite a bit.
How often would you get mail from home?
Supposed to write them every week. So every time I'd write, well, they'd say, now, I used to correspond with Gilbert Wallace, his sister.
Right. Is there something about your uniform and your family? Were they proud to see you in the uniform?
Oh, yeah. Of course, when you just get out of the service, you don't wear it too much. And I never did wear it, so I told my mother to go ahead and make a quilt out of it.
Your mother made a quilt out of it?
And I wish I would have kept them.
I can understand that. How did you feel people treated you
I was treated,
when you came home?
I was treated real good.
Did you see others that weren't?
I knew about the Vietnam people.
Okay, but not World War II.
No, I don't think so.
Why do you think that was? That they were treated better from World War II than in Vietnam?
Well, I think what they felt like that that wasn't in our business being in that war.
Right.
I think that was it.
Joe, what's just one of your very best memories of being in the Navy? One good memory you can come out with.
Well, I remember when signed up and they sent me across Mexico on that troop train. It was exciting then.
Why?
Well, you'd go through those mountains, over those mountains, and they had those railroad tracks just on those real high, you know.
Uh-huh.
And of course, as being a kid, I was afraid they was going to turn the radio off because everybody got on one side.
Everybody would get to one side to keep the train from going off.
No. That's what they're doing, is going on the wrong side.
Oh my gosh.
I was young then, but I thought about that.
What was one of your worst memories from the war?
I guess that stepping in that boy. I never did know who he was. I never did know who he was. We took, our deck was covered with wounded and dead. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's dark. You couldn't have any lights, so you were trying to feel your way through the bodies.
And were there? It's fair to say that numerous soldiers and they were buried at sea.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell us what that was like?
Well, of course, everybody had to be dressed in their. I think we had to have our blues on.
Uh-huh.
And we'd all stand around where he's going to be buried, and they had a board, and they had it on the ship's rail, and they'd have their sermon in service, and then when time to go, they just raised the back of that board up. He just slid right out.
Is it something that would happen, say, once a week, every day?
Oh, no. It was mostly from that destroyer
Mm-hmm.
that we had to do.
Why do you think that one memory has stuck with you the most?
Well, I never had that happen before.
Mm-hmm.
But I have found people dead since then.
Uh-huh.
That wasn't in the service. I found her brother. Then a lady called us from California, and they wanted me to go check on her ex-husband because he hadn't heard from her. So I did, and I went over there and I went to the window of the person's house and I hollered at him, and he answered me. So I didn't want to go in the house by myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I got the neighbor. I knew him. And he and I went in together. They put him in the hospital. I don't remember how long it lasted, but he didn't last very long.
Mm.
He was one of those persons. He had his church things in the house, in a corner, and he had a deal that had him a little praying place.
Right.
And he didn't live. He died right after that.
I've heard it said that the Navy took boys and made them into men. How do you feel about that? Is that a good statement?
It is.
And why so?
Because it made me.
You think so? How fast do you think it made you from a boy to a man?
Not very long.
And why is that?
Because I just felt that well, it's all this action,
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I guess I'm not very smart, but just the time, like I told you, is the only time I ever really got scared. I just kept waiting.
Mm-hmm. Now, Joe, most men would have said, well, I think World War II was plenty. Would you agree with that?
I don't know, it wasn't for me.
Now, you went to Korea.
Yeah.
Volunteered?
Well, I was already in there.
You're already in there. So, you did get out of World War II, But you were not officially released from service.
Oh, I was released.
You were. And then were you drafted back in?
No.
How did that happen?
Well, another boy was going back in with me. And he backed out. I said, well, I'd already decided to go, and I was going on. I was going to make a career out of it.
How different do you think those two wars were?
Well, they didn't have as many sneak attacks as Korea.
Not as many sneak attacks in Korea.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And we went over from the United States, went to Japan.
Uh-huh.
And we stationed there for 6 months.
In Japan. What was that like?
Well, we was on this ASR, submarine rescue vessel. Excuse me. And USS Chanticleer. And so we had they sent us over for 6 months. We had to spend 6 months. In the meantime, I got a picture of a whale boat where we took a picture, and this submarine had gone ground on coral reefs off of Japan. We was on a secret trip.
Uh-huh.
And
secret mission.
Anyway, we was going and they radioed us. The submarine was on the coral reef, and we had to go there and get it off of there. So they had to send a line way out on that whale boat, and they hooked it onto it, and we pulled it off. But he couldn't get off by himself.
Really?
It's just ASR, just a big old submarine. Tugboat.
Like a tugboat, uh-huh.
I got pictures of it too. So, and then that's what we did. We had guard duty. We'd go around and patrol outside the water.
What was the weather like in Korea?
Well, we were so close to Japan, is that they didn't have things like they got now.
Uh-huh. How do you mean?
Like that thing that washed them all away.
The tsunami?
Yeah.
Right. Didn't have any bad storms like that? A lot of rain?
Well, pretty good. Good rain, a lot more than Bougainville.
What was the worst thing you saw in Korea?
Well, I didn't see too much because we weren't right close. We were there, but we weren't in any war with whether they were on land.
Okay. Can you tell me what freedom means to you?
It means that we're not got somebody over us. We can do what we want, and are supposed to be able to. And it means a lot to me.
Well, Joe, it's because of you and a million more that have brought us that freedom. And when I first met you today, what did I do? We thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
You are a treasure, both of you.